In your new book, I have a copy here, you have a copy here, The Rise and Fall of Nations, you outline 10 factors that identify winners and losers in the global economy. One of those winners, in your opinion, is India, despite its shortcomings. One of the potential losers is China. So let's go through those. Why is it that you think India may have a bright future?
Right. I think, you know, my line about India has been that it has consistently disappointed the optimists and the pessimists. That's the history of India, right? And I think that the good thing is that the expectations about India have been reset now. So the hype about India, which was there, has really been deflated a lot. Even Modi coming to power, you know, there was a lot of hype about that. Now there's a lot of realism. So one of the rules I have out there is that is the hype watch, that for countries that are too hyped up, be a bit cautious, and for the countries which people are ignoring, those are the countries where you're likely to sort of be rewarded going forward in the next 5 years or so. So that's one of the rules that I speak about on India. But the other issue about India, which I feel is, which is fine, is the fact that in India, the problems are just not as acute in other parts of the world. So it's a bit of a relative game as well. And the fact that the rest of the region, South Asia, is beginning to do better. So even the other countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and I dare say Pakistan, those countries are beginning to do better, and that should help the region as such.
To go into your 10 principles just a little bit here. So India, the population's growing. That's good under one of your principles, right?
The demographics.
The location, as you said, the geography, being able to take advantage of its location. On the other hand, political reform, the importance of political reform. Prime Minister Modi came in, wanted to reform, hasn't worked out yet the way he expects to. And also government regulation. There's a lot of government regulation in India.
Yeah, there's a lot of state meddling which happens in India. And, you know, so the entire chapter on perils of state, in fact, is very focused on that. But I feel that it is somewhat reducing. So like this is all about change. Like all these 10 rules focus on change. If you look at the absolute snapshot, it'd be very difficult to. And in today's environment, you have to remember one thing more, which is that there's no country in the world which will score well on all the 10 rules.
Right. Sure,
There's not one country today which will score well on all the rules.
Well, when you say it's improving, you should tell that to Apple and Tim Cook right now, right, who can't get their stores into India because of government regulation, because they have to have local ownership.
There are lots of problems in India. But the thing about India is that the base is so low. And, like in terms of their per capita income is only $2,000. Whereas China now has become a truly middle-income country. And the problems China faces are very different compared to India does at such a low base.
When one of the other items on your 10-point list of Rise and Fall of Nations is the good billionaire, which I love that term. Right. Explain it. China actually does better on the billionaire front than India, maybe not by much. But what's good about billionaires?
Yeah, like I have an entire chapter there focused on income inequality. I think this has really become the hot issue across the world. And my entire point there is, when does income inequality become such an issue that it begins to affect the economic reforms in a country, where the population has a backlash against wealth creation because they think all the wealth being created is sort of like only benefiting a few people or a few bad billionaires. So the entire chapter about good billionaires, bad billionaires really sort of looks at the list of billionaires in a country and tries to assess what does that tell you about a country. And in India's case, in fact, if you look at what was happening last decade, all the billionaires who were rising were either people who had merely inherited their wealth or billionaires in corruption-prone industries such as real estate, mining, commodities. That's now changing a bit this decade. But in China's case, a lot of the rise of the billionaires has been concentrated in the good industries, such as tech.
So that's a positive factor for China.
Yeah,
so why are you so skeptical about China's future?
On my most important rule, the kiss of debt.
Debt.
Which is, on debt. That every single economic miracle in history has ended when a country has accumulated too much debt over a short span of time, which is when the debt increases very rapidly. And what China has seen since 2009 is that no other developing country in history has accumulated as much debt as China has done in the last few years. And there's one statistic which tells all. Today, it takes $6 of debt to create $1 of growth in China. At the peak of the US housing bubble in 2008, it took $3 of debt to create $1 of growth in China.
So they're buying growth.
in the United States.
They're buying growth with debt, is what you're saying.
Massive amounts of debt.
And it's getting more expensive.
And it's not a very good bargain.
That's right. And this is not how China used to be. Like until 2008, China's debt ratios were relatively stable. This is the change in China's story in the last few years. And that's why I've gone from being really bullish about China last decade to now being much less optimistic about it.